Hey there, my name is Anthony Romano, and in this video I'm going to teach you about the anti-inflammatory effects of a ketogenic diet, and I'm going to explain mostly about why they're occurring, okay, because there's plenty of evidence online about these anti-inflammatory effects, and I'm just going to explain what the cause of them are. So, with these anti-inflammatory effects, a lot of people are asking me that I know in my life, why are people getting these results? I see plenty of comments on YouTube. Why are people reversing autoimmune disorders? How are people fixing their joint problems? Things like this are common questions with the anti-inflammatory side of keto. And besides ketosis being a less inflammatory state, particularly if people do that from a full-on fast, there are many benefits that come from what you're not eating and from what you are eating on keto. So with what you're not eating, a lot of people have sensitivities to certain foods. Even if you don't believe that you're gluten intolerant or celiac or any sort of difficulty processing grains, a lot of people are more gluten intolerant than they think. And the whole gist of gluten intolerance is that when you take it in, your body views it as something it has to get rid of. Okay, it has an inflammatory response to this because it's trying to get rid of this gluten, and it basically attacks its own cells. That is the gist of the inflammatory response of gluten. And people who have celiac disease and stuff have a much greater reaction to that. But you may have an intolerance to gluten, and many people on YouTube who fix their inflammatory issues may have had gluten intolerances. Another thing too is you're eating less processed food. So when you're eating less processed food, you're exposing yourself to less toxins that would have been incurring on these products during the processing. So when you have any sort of grain product, this goes hand in hand with the gluten, any sort of grain product is basically at risk for developing mold. And anytime you leave anything out in moisture, it can develop mold. If there is something that's not protecting nuts or shells or any sort of product that is perishable, they are liable to incur mold, okay? And when you have processed products or bars or even buns or bread or things like this, they can be much more likely to be exposed to mold. And if you've ever read The Bulletproof Diet, this is a big thing, reducing mold toxins. Even with coffee beans, they're likely to incur mold. So less processed food because of the mold toxins, because of the gluten, because of the high amounts of sugar, the high amounts of fructose that you're reducing, because fructose can cause inflammation in and of itself if you have too much. And this also brings in insulin. Okay, insulin is the hormone that's released that helps you basically flush nutrients into your muscles. And if you are insulin sensitive, that's good. It means that your body is good at using insulin. If you are insulin resistant, which you can achieve by having a very high sugar diet, your body is naturally going to be less effective at using insulin. And what that basically means is there's going to be leftover insulin in your bloodstream because your body's going to excrete or create more insulin that it knows what to do with. So it's going to have excess insulin and only use some of that insulin while the rest of it's going to be floating around your bloodstream. So this is basically what pre-diabetes is. And with too much insulin or insulin resistance, this is what's going to create more inflammation in your body. So even reducing your insulin, getting it more stable, which is what a ketogenic diet will do because you're not eating sugar, your blood sugar and blood insulin are way more stable. This is going to reduce a lot of the C-reactive proteins and other inflammatory markers that come as a result of insulin resistance. So insulin is a big piece of the puzzle there as well. Now, that was more so about what you're not eating. Okay, now what you are eating or what you may be eating on a ketogenic diet can vary from person to person. People can have clean keto diets and dirty keto diets, but the cleaner and more popular keto diets tend to be higher in omega-3 fats and lower in omega-6 fats. So if you're not familiar with those, omega-3, which is people often have the supplements, the fish oils, I take them, I like them as well. Omega-3s are often looked at as the anti-inflammatory fat, and omega-6 are looked at as the inflammatory fat. And basically, the more optimized your ratio is in the intake of those fats, the less inflamed you're going to be. Higher amounts of omega-3 are like firefighters. This is an example I was using while talking to a friend of mine the other day. With too much omega-6, it doesn't matter if you're still eating a lot of omega-3. If you don't have more firefighters than you have of a fire, you're not going to put out the inflammation. So people tend to have more optimized ratios of omega-3 to omega-6 when they're on a ketogenic diet, just because of the food selection that often entails from a ketogenic diet. Another step from that is the oils that people are using. People, when they're eating more processed food, right, which is less likely to happen on a ketogenic diet just because of the options you have available. When you're eating more processed food, you're more likely to be eating processed oils, and processed oils are probably the most inflammatory foods you could eat. Canola oils, seed oils, sunflower oils, those things, I talk about them every now and then. I'll reference that they're not good for you, and they're higher in omega-6, they're oxidized, they're exposed to high heat in processing, and this is not good. You don't want to be consuming this. It's basically like consuming a chemical. So don't consume processed oils. Those are very much going to skew your omega-6 ratio in less favor of omega-3, okay? So you want more omega-3, less omega-6, and with too many omega-6s, your best step forward is to just cut out the processed oils completely, and processed food should already be off the table. So then there's also more nutrient-dense foods. People typically eat more nutrient-dense foods on keto just because they're eating more fat, and fat, if you're getting it from an animal source, tends to be where most of the nutrients are stored, because even with humans, we store nutrition and toxins in our fat. And with a healthy animal, so if you're buying better quality animal products, organic greens, organic animals, whatever you're buying, if you're buying better quality foods, this is what's going to allow you to have better health. So, example, it all comes down to how artificial and how handled the product was by people, right? If it's more natural, more organic, less pesticides thrown into the organic vegetables, less, crap diet into the animal that you're eating, you're going to have higher nutrient density in these foods. And people typically, this is one of the less common themes here, but a lot of people do have more in their budget for groceries every week because they're not buying half the amounts of food they would typically eat. And a lot of people put that towards better quality food, so getting more organic foods. So if you can also put more of your budget that would have went to carbs into higher quality foods, particularly the animal products and organic greens, you will get a lot better results from your diet and your health. So inflammation-wise, you are going to experience a lot more smooth of an experience of life if you can prioritize those foods, which also happen to be higher in omega-3s, lower in omega-6s, less processed, less sugar, less fructose, less insulin spiking, less gluten because there's none, and that should basically summarize all of it right there. But hopefully this gave you an indication of why keto is so anti-inflammatory. There's other books out there that also talk about how keto influences your brain, how the lack of inflammation is going to make your brain run smoother. But additionally, another thing you have to know is that your body runs very effectively on fat. And that is why we store fat. That is why our brain is made predominantly of fat. It runs very smoothly on omega-3s. And these are the things that you need to prioritize in your diet if you want to prioritize your health. So hopefully this video is valuable to you. Leave me some questions and comments in the description, in the comments. And in my description, I also have a free training plan, free meal plan, which you can take advantage of completely free. And also, if you want to join my 60-day transformation challenge, you could possibly win some products from me if you do well. Besides that, thank you for watching. My name is Anthony Romano. Peace.